Look at this destruction. This is what modern logging looks like. Some of these machines can fell more than 900 trees in a single day. Globally, we cut down about 15 billion trees a year to make houses, packages, books, and furniture. That's 41 million trees every day, roughly a football field of trees every 2 seconds. And the US is the biggest consumer of forest products on Earth. Now, I know this sounds a little naive, but these videos and stats really got me wondering, how does this country still have any trees left?
Jumping around.
I had to find out, so I did what we always do on Business Explains the World. I went to the source.
Look at that. Wow.
And ironically, it was in the heart of destruction that I found the reason we still have trees at all. In colonial America, the forest felt infinite. Nearly 1 billion acres of woodland covered the continent. European settlers stepped off their ship and hit a wall of green. It looked like it would never end. To the settlers, those trees weren't scenery. They were survival. You cut down trees to build a house and a barn. You cleared land to grow enough food to live. Back then, wood was the American energy system. To keep one family warm through a single winter, you might need dozens of cords of wood. And that's just for one family, for one winter. By 1700, the first warning light switched on. Fur-bearing animals like beavers, once everywhere in the eastern forests, were suddenly hard to find. As America grew, clearing land got industrial. To make money, people needed farmland, lots of it. Forests were stripped en masse. In 1600, about 90% of what's now Connecticut was forest. And by 1850, that was down to about 30%. Now add manifest destiny, the idea that the US was destined to spread across the continent. Hundreds of thousands of people went west in covered wagons between 1841 and 69, fueled by the Homestead Act. You could get 160 acres of public land if you lived on it, built on it, and farmed part of it. Standing forests had almost no value. Cleared land did. Then, big industry showed up to turn cleared forests into big money. I mean, we're talking steam-powered sawmills, railroads cutting deep into virgin forests. Logging stopped being about making room for crops. Rather, it became about extracting timber as fast as possible and shipping it to exploding cities. The business model was simple. Cut everything, take the money, and move on. No replanting, no long-term plan. Why bother? There was always another wall of green on the horizon. Economists call this the tragedy of the commons. Michigan's white pine country became the hub. From 1860 to 1910, it was the top lumber state in America. Towns like DeWard popped up overnight. 800 people and a sawmill running around the clock chewing through the surrounding forest. People thought the forests would never run out, but they were wrong. Soon, the white pine was all but gone. DeWard turned into a ghost town. That same cycle played out across the Great Lakes, the Northeast, and the South. Wisconsin and Michigan lost about half their white pine. Pennsylvania lost over 70% of its forests. The landscape started to look like the moon. Endless stumps, eroded hillsides ready to slide, dry brush waiting to burn. By the early 1900s, America had already wiped out about half of its original forests. The seemingly inexhaustible supply of trees was running out. What was left wouldn't last another 300 years. I couldn't stop thinking about this. If we did that much damage, that fast, how did we not finish the job? How do we still have forests at all? So to find out, I went to see how logging works now. This is Northern California's Humboldt County. It's home to some of the largest remaining old-growth coastal redwoods, the 2,000-year-old giants you see on postcards. There, I found a forest management company called Green Diamond. They own about 400,000 acres of land in California right next to the public parks. I sent an email, booked a flight, and got up before sunrise to see how modern logging actually works. Seeing those trees stretching to the horizon, I felt like one of those early colonists staring at a wall of green. But once I got inside, it looked a whole lot like destruction.
I mean, are we living a Ferngully nightmare here? What's going on?
With violence like this, how is it possible we haven't run out of trees? Let's see if the answer will be revealed in the process. And that process starts with tethering, essentially anchoring machines in place.
What the tether machine does, it puts pressure into the hillside so he gets traction with his tracks. So you can see where he's been, and he cuts and arranges those logs.
Look at that. That takes some guts to go down that. A lot of trust in a cable.
One machine anchored on top of a ridge. Another arranges logs at the bottom. Cables pull everything uphill. Once everything is anchored and stable, that's when the cutting actually begins.
And there it goes. This is a Tiger Cat leveling shovel with a directional falling head, and it can cut up to 900 trees a day. Let's go watch it cut some. Whoa! Look at that. Whoa!
You have these grapples here that are able to grab a tree, and there's a saw, almost like a big chainsaw. The operator sets the machine up, grabs that tree, and uses the saw to cut it down, and then sort of lifts and guides that tree in the direction he wants it to go.
But cutting trees is only the first step. Now they have to get all that wood back up the hill.
The yarder at top will send the grapples down the hill, grab a turn of tree-length logs,
Yep.
and it will bring them up the hill. You can see the logs coming up now toward the landing, and once they get closer, he's beginning to swing.
Once the logs reach the landing, each tree is processed, measured, and cut to spec. The machine grabbed a tree, stripped branches, measured, cut it into perfect lengths.
Since he has a loader working with him, we'll put them into a pile. We'll try to sort them just by species so they're set up for the product in each log deck.
Redwood in one pile, Douglas fir in another, each sorted by size. Some logs go to framing houses, others to furniture, some to paper mills.
A yarder that has, say, choker setters and traditional logging might move between 6 to 8 log truckloads a day. In this case, we might be upwards of maybe 12 to 14.
Really?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
The efficiency was staggering. At this point, there's only one thing left to do.
So we have a truck getting loaded here, and it's going to one of the mills that we sell to, our customers. This truck will carry about 25 tons of logs on it, one full load.
So how much are we hauling?
52,000 pounds of logs.
I've got to be honest, watching this process makes me wonder about sustainability. Trees are coming down fast, and the machines doing it are only getting more productive. But then, I met Brad, and he introduced me to some of his babies.
A different scarcity problem is facing every creator and founder today. What if the challenge isn't physical resources, but virtual ones? I'm the CEO of Dynamo, and like a lot of you, we face real resource constraints that in the past would have limited the kinds of tools we can build to make this a successful company. Engineering and product design teams cost a lot of money. For example, we spend a lot of time and money making these episodes, and we need a tool that helps us choose a thumbnail and title that helps market our work to smart audiences like you. But we don't know how to build that ourselves, and it would take an engineering team months and a lot of money to make it. So we turned to Lovable. By simply describing our problem in natural language, Lovable built us a YouTube packaging planner in minutes. Now we can describe the video's concept, and Lovable instantly connects to the YouTube API, pulls our best performing patterns, and starts generating engaging titles and DALL-E-powered thumbnail concepts. And the best part? We didn't write a single line of code. We just described what we wanted, and Lovable built it. As we want new features, we can use Lovable to handle the technical details that bring our ideas to life. Lovable isn't a no-code tool. It's a new way to build that shatters the code barrier. If you're a founder, operator, or creator who wants to stop buying software and start building the exact tools your business needs, go to this link. Thank you, Lovable, for supporting Business Explains the World. Now, let's get back to the episode.
So all this here, this is all redwood.
Yes, this is what 568,000 trees looks like. That way.
It's a half a million trees right here. Have you named every one?
You know, they all have names to me, each genotype. So this one is RB18. It's the Shrek genotype. But they are all my children. I care about each one individually. We put too much work into them to not. We selected trees from the landscape. We went through a really rigorous testing program to ensure that what we're doing is correct for the landscape. And these need to be tested all across our landscape to make sure that we're planting the best.
They're breeding better trees. That means faster growth, straighter trunks, disease resistance.
We're enhancing natural genetics. I think a lot of people look at the forestry industry and they say, oh, well, they come in, they harvest, and they leave. My budgets would say otherwise. Like we put a lot of money into regenerating because I think, you know, a healthy forest is a profitable forest.
Aha! Now we're getting somewhere. Brad's job exists because a healthy forest makes money.
When we plant something, we're really planting it generally not for your career, but for the next person. The work you do today, you don't necessarily benefit from, but the future generations will.
Green Diamond is incentivized to get the most out of its land, long term. This clearly isn't clear cutting of the 1800s.
Let's go over a map real quick.
Okay, the map.
Walking into. So this is the Denman North THP, Unit C.
The map showed a patchwork, one patch being cut, others growing, others already replanted.
So you'll cut portions, and then you have to wait a period of time. We're cutting less than 2% of the property every year.
Less than 2% a year? Well, all right then, let's do the math. If you're only cutting 2% annually, it'll take 50 years to clear the entire property. The business strategy was starting to click. If you're going to own the same land for 130 years, destroying it makes no sense. And modern logging operations have to get creative when they have limited land.
We're taking a stand that's probably about 30 to 35 years old, and we're doing an intermediate treatment, which will grow for another 15 or so years before final harvest.
This wasn't clear cutting, this was weeding.
So this harvester goes ahead, opens up these trails, and then as they get in, they'll reach between the trees and thin them out.
The machine cut narrow trails through the forest, then reach sideways to grab specific trees. Leave this one, take that one. The goal? Give the remaining trees more sunlight, water, nutrients, space. When the forwarder drove out, the forest still looked like a forest, just a little bit less crowded. The trees left behind would grow faster, straighter, bigger. And this is when I realized the process can actually improve forest health, not just extract from it. Okay, so this is all beginning to answer my question. We still have trees, in part because companies like Green Diamond got better at managing their land. However, more trees does not equal a forest. If you're cutting trees down every 50 years, what happens to everything else that lives here? Even the best run logging forests aren't the same as wild ones. They grow trees efficiently, but they don't grow complexity. Fewer dead trees, fewer layers, fewer niches for wildlife to survive. You can't replicate nature, but you can try.
This zone that we're in right now is the riparian zone or wildlife protection zone.
Yeah.
And so this area directly adjacent to the creek would not be available for harvest.
When they do clear cuts, they keep a certain number of trees per acre. For wildlife corridors, seed sources, habitat structure. But no matter what, working forests aren't the same as undisturbed old growth. These stumps were giants that would never come back to the harvested area. Today, old-growth logging is heavily restricted in California. But the Forest Service recently abandoned a plan that would have protected old growth across federal lands. Some foresters argued the rules were too rigid. For environmentalists, it felt like a step backward, leaving these irreplaceable forests vulnerable once again. Okay, it feels like we're getting somewhere. At Green Diamond, logging looks sustainable. But they are just one company. Perhaps they're an outlier. Because to me, there's still a big paradox to investigate. Look at this. Even though the US has ramped up logging efficiency, tripled its population, and grown the economy by something like 20 times, America has actually more forested land now than it did in 1925. How? The first big shift wasn't environmental, it was economic. In the 1890s, the US began enforcing private forest property rights. In the Great Lake region, the moment forests stopped being a free-for-all, logging slowed. Because destroying your own land is a terrible business model. So, this solved the tragedy of the commons. Then, something started to change, quietly, far from the forests themselves. Now, zoom out and look at the map of the United States. At the turn of the 20th century, farming spread almost everywhere. Across the East Coast, through the South, pushed into hilly forest edgeland that's hard to farm, but farmed anyway. Then, the map starts to change. In the Midwest, large flat regions begin producing far more food than before. Tractors make it possible for a single farmer to work enormous continuous fields. Agriculture intensifies in the Midwest and parts of the West. Those areas get darker, denser, more productive. Meanwhile, other regions begin to fade. In New England, rocky hillsides stop being farmed. Across much of the South, a lot of the farmland no longer makes economic sense. And as farming pulls back from these regions, they change purpose. Former fields grow brush. Brush turns into young forest. And over time, millions of acres return to tree cover. To summarize, as agriculture intensified in the Midwest, forests in the East and South returned. Meanwhile, the forests out west were now in the crosshairs. In 1898, Theodore Roosevelt appointed Gifford Pinchot as the first head of the U.S. Forest Service. They believed America was heading towards a timber famine. Their solution wasn't preservation, it was management. Cut trees, but replant them. Plan for decades, not just the next harvest. In 1905, Roosevelt transferred National Forest Reserves into Pinchot's new agency. The Forest Service rapidly expanded federal forests to about 145 million acres. Critics called it a land grab. People in the West called Pinchot Czar Pinchot. But Roosevelt and Pinchot pitched a simple idea. If you burn through the forest now, the economy collapses later. A growing stack of rules added a new reality. You could log, just not however you wanted. Layer by layer, ownership, abandoned farmland, and long-term management, the incentives flipped. Today, logging companies are incentivized to get the most out of the land they own. And getting the most out of your land is a science that requires an economic explanation. This is economist William Stanley Jevons. In 1865, he predicted that eventually we'd run out of resources like coal and timber. The famous Jevons paradox states technology couldn't save us. Yes, it could help us become more efficient with our resources, but that efficiency will just lower the price, leading us to use even more than before. In the end, we'll just use it all up. He said, no more coal, no more timber. And so he stockpiled a bunch of paper and wrote his notes on the scraps of envelopes instead. But then, another economist in 1931 named Harold Hotelling from my own Washington state figured out the math. Here, look. This equation means that private firms won't just take everything they can at once. Rather, they'll slow down today in order to sell more in the future. And so here's how that equation applies to a typical sustainable forestry firm. Phase 1, plant. You prepare the site and plant seedlings. This is the investment phase. Phase 2, grow and manage. Thin out competing trees, and you'll get some intermediate revenue from the thinnings, but you'll also need to monitor forest health. I met scientists who study birds, fish, and amphibians. They count everything, create just the right stream conditions, and follow the strict government regulations that help wildlife thrive. Unlike standard farm crops, a working forest will support a tremendous variety of plants and animals. Look, you have to see these mushrooms. Imagine what a farmer would do if they saw these growing in the middle of a cornfield. Phase 3, the big show, harvest time. Once they reach their target size, maybe about 12 to 18 inches, you cut, stack, and haul them to market, earning your primary revenue. The next phase, replant immediately, the cycle starts again. We cut down wheat every year, and nobody's worried if we're going to run out of wheat. When a farmer harvests wheat, it's an annual cycle. But when a guy harvests timber, that's a 50-year cycle. But here's the key. A timber company doesn't wait decades between paychecks. They own thousands of acres of trees at different stages. The result? A steady annual revenue from a self-renewing resource. To show that they're doing it right, companies get certified. Third-party auditors check replanting rates, habitat protection, water quality, chemical use, and worker safety. Certified wood products can command premium prices. Consumers and builders increasingly demand it. You can see for yourself. Look at this, and this. Today, forestry in the U.S. generates $288 billion a year and employs nearly 1 million people. Altogether, we have 751 million acres of forest land. That's about 1/3 of our total land area, and it's not going anywhere. Today, we're growing 50% more than we cut. Sustainability didn't kill American logging, it saved it. Step outside the US and the story is much darker. Today, deforestation isn't so much about logging for wood products, it's about agriculture. Look at this map. Over the last 50 years, 300,000 square miles of Brazil's rainforest were destroyed for cattle and soy farms. In Southeast Asia, orangutan habitats get wiped out for palm oil plantations. Unsustainable practices in Haiti means you can literally see the country border with the Dominican Republic. These forests don't get cut on 50-year cycles. They get cut once, converted to pasture or monoculture, and often never return. The good news is that the U.S. exports more tons of forest products than we import from the rest of the world, meaning that on net, America exports our sustainable timber practices. And luckily, the U.S. model isn't unique. Sweden and Finland have doubled their forest area in the last century and now grow more trees than they cut. Costa Rica went from one of the fastest deforesting countries on Earth to doubling its forest cover in just 30 years. Even in places like Brazil and Indonesia, there are early signs of improvement. More monitoring, more land use planning, more certification schemes. It's slow, it's not linear, and it's nowhere near enough. But the core idea that saved America's forests, that you can use forests and maintain forests, is starting to spread. That idea might be the difference between a planet that keeps regrowing its trees and a planet that runs out of them. After seeing the massive stumps on the ancient redwoods, I had to see the living ones up close. Today, we only see these giant trees in parks and preserves. But because modern logging practices require set-asides, if we maintain the modern forestry practices for another 1,000 years, we will again see these giants in private lumber lands.